Aloha everybody. It's been a couple of weeks. I had some travel days and super grateful that Deanne was able to sub in for me. Super happy about that. I'm here in Kona. Well, technically I'm in Waimea. I'm on the Big Island, and Christina and I were going to be spending Thanksgiving here. And I wanted to keep up with the Facebook Lives. I know I was doing like a 3-parter, and then Deanne jumped in. So you guys have probably been patiently waiting for the 3rd part. I am running errands today. We're driving all around, getting our place situated up here. So you see me in my Steelers hat, big Steelers fan. Christina's got hers on as well, right there. And got some boxes in the back because we're going to take them to UPS. So you guys get me in the raw on this one. And I'll tell you, I was telling Christina, it's been about 3 years since I've done a Facebook Live from my car. And the kids were eating. They were eating pizza over at Pau Pizza in Waimea. And I was like, I'm supposed to go do a Facebook Live right now. Jumped out in the car and did it. So I was reminiscing with Christina about that this is not the first time I've done this here. And so anyway, let's jump into this. Oh, Deanne's on. Everyone say hi to Deanne. Deanne totally helped out last week. Super appreciative of that. And so let's jump in. Let's talk about like what we've already discussed, right? We did perception as interpretation. That was the first part of the 3-part series. Perception as interpretation is the idea that the world that we see outside of us, we're interpreting it. And I was actually explaining this to my client yesterday, that our interpretations, we can take something and make a meaning out of it where there is actually no meaning. Meaning you put a label on it or assign an emotion to it, whether it's positive or negative. That's your interpretation. So for example, I'm looking out and today's kind of cloudy and so beautiful when we got in. If you guys follow me on Instagram, our very first day at our place here, incredible double rainbow, absolutely loved it. Okay, well, how do you interpret that? I interpret it as a positive sign. In the Hawaiian culture, it's a very positive sign. Now I'm looking out, today's cloudy. How do you interpret that? Do you interpret it as good or bad? That's interpretation. We discussed that in a previous one. Then we talked about perception as projection. And that's where you can actually take what you have inside and project it out onto the world around you. So if you're the lead heart cell in the petri dish, you are possibly projecting onto other people. So if you don't like a situation, you influence other people. We talked about that on the last Facebook Live that I did with all of you. And now what we're talking about is just reality. It's reality. So, for example, I was sharing with my client when we got here, we were experiencing 55-mile-an-hour gusts of wind, and this is my Jeep. It used to be Ethan's Jeep, and I purchased it from him because he moved to Honolulu, said he doesn't need it anymore. And so now it's family car, family Jeep, and little known fact, a Jeep is less aerodynamic than a cow. It's a true, I looked it up. Ethan told me that and I said, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And no, lo and behold, a cow is actually more aerodynamic than a Jeep. Now, if you're just jumping into the Facebook Live, you're like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Well, dealing with reality, right? The 55-mile-an-hour gusts of wind were making this Jeep do the hula. We were moving all over the place, and I'm just giving you facts. I'm giving you reality. Now you might sit there and go, okay, well that makes sense. Deanne, it's true, it's true. You might be sitting there going, that makes sense, right? So if I all of a sudden say, oh, how horrible, it ruined my day, that's my interpretation. That's my interpretation. If I then say to Christina, God, this is horrible, the weather's awful, I'm now influencing her, that's perception as projection. If I'm just telling you that there are gusts of wind, I'm just explaining reality to you. I'm telling you what's going on in the environment. Why is this so important? Now that you have an understanding of it, let's talk about why this is so important and what to do about it. Every single client that I have ever worked with has needed to learn how to enforce boundaries. How to enforce a boundary with someone that they love, whether it's a positive boundary like, hey, I want to snuggle in the morning, or we need to have coffee time on a regular basis, whatever it is. Or even when you're dealing with a boundary being ran over. For example, Ethan, when he was a teenager, a couple of times he got a little mouthy with me, and I needed to explain to him that, hey, I'm your dad, we need to have a boundary. My son Ethan, you guys have heard me talk about him for decades now. He's 23, just graduated, and he came to work for the company. And in doing so, the two of us have to learn how to interact with each other. So we were out at dinner. I had the whole team there. I go into business mode, and Ethan starts talking to me like I'm not in business mode. And so I excused myself from the situation, and the next day I sat down with him, and we did Ho'oponopono, made sure everything was good. And I needed to explain to him that now that he's working for the company, we have to learn how to have another hat that we wear. Ethan and I, dad hat, obviously, son hat, and then now that he's an adult, I had to learn another hat with that. He's done all the training, so he's used to me going into teacher mode. That's another hat. And I sat down with him and I said, buddy, we need to figure out how to work together. And I explained the boundary that had been ran over. I avoided assigning any meaning to it. I avoided projecting anything out there. I just explained reality. I said, Ethan, when I'm going into business mode and I'm talking to the team and I'm having to be the leader, I'm having to be the owner of the company, when you responded and talked to me, the way that you talked to me, everyone around the table, I noticed that they looked at you like, kind of like maybe that shouldn't have been said. And I know that you tried to back it up. I said, but buddy, the fact of the matter is that when I'm in boss mode, I need you to think I'm an employee of the company and I'm needing to take directions from them. I said, we're going to learn how to navigate this. I didn't assign any meaning to it. That's where people get into arguments, debates. What they do is they assign a meaning to the reality, and the moment you do that, you can't even deal with the reality. So I didn't call him disrespectful. I didn't share that, I thought that he had a negative intention behind it. All I shared with him is how I felt and what I perceived. I owned it. I said, this is my perception of it, and this is what I was perceiving. I said, and I don't want to talk to other people and see what they were perceiving. I just saw a different reaction from them from a physiological standpoint, and I was able to address the behavior so that he understood what behavior I would expect instead. I just want you to stop and think about that for a moment. You can't even address the behavior if you are interpreting or projecting. So my client yesterday, she needed to enforce a boundary with her mom. She needed to enforce a boundary because her mom would, from her opinion, be hyper negative. And she would always say, Mom, why are you being so negative? And her mom would be like, I'm not, I'm just making it real, I'm keeping it real. That kind of mentality. I have 3 clients right now that are all enforcing boundaries with their mom. I don't know if there's a theme up. I don't know if I'm going to have to reach out to my mom and enforce a boundary randomly, but there's definitely a theme. You're right, Vicky. Working with family can be so difficult. And I said, so here's what you have to do. I said, you got to avoid going in there interpreting it like she's intentionally doing it to piss you off or that she has a negative intention. I said, the moment you do that, you're going to get into a debate about the intention behind it as opposed to talking about the reality. And she did. She had a successful conversation with her and was like, hey, Mom, this is how I feel. This is what happens internally for me. One of the things that you don't fully appreciate possibly is that I actually know a lot of positive things. And the mom said, explain to me. So she walked her in another room, showed her all of the manuals, all of the certificates that she has. She's like, this is all the training that I've done. I said, and Mom, when you tell me what not to do, it doesn't give me any direction. I need you to tell me what to do if you want to share something with me. And the mom sat there and went, when you were younger, I never imparted certain things to you that my parents imparted to me, and I feel bad about that. And that's why I share it. So all of a sudden, they're not debating over intention. They're not projecting onto each other. They're dealing with reality. They're dealing with the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is that she was using negative language, what not to do, as opposed to what to do. By getting past the interpretations, by getting past the projections, you can have incredible conversations. And considering that those of you who are in the U.S., tomorrow is Thanksgiving, you might right now be in a household with someone that you need to bring some reality to. Or heading into, those of you who aren't in the U.S., heading into December. We're dealing with a lot of reality here. And so what I want you to do, just kind of bringing all of this together, If you want to go back and watch the other videos, you got to avoid interpretation. You want to avoid projection so that you're able to deal with reality and enforce positive boundaries. Share with people what works for you and what doesn't. At the end of the day, people love boundaries. And I think I did a Facebook Live on boundaries. I did. So you can go back and look at the videos so you can see the quick formula of how to enforce boundaries. Shit, you got about 24 hours before you might be enforcing a lot of boundaries. So I'd get to it right away. All right? Those of you in the U.S., have a wonderful holiday. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Aloha, ahui ho.